Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode of Fantasy Lore and More, Hannah Steenbock is joining me to talk about her book, Earth Splits, and we may also talk about Sky Falls, which came out a couple of days ago, and I already have my copy, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll be getting yours too. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you for having me again. I will have to admit, we did talk about South and we did talk about North, I believe, the last time I was here. And I've just been tapping away on the series, and we have 2 more books to it now, which makes it 6 books. And in order to confuse everyone, I split the series into 2. The first 4 are called Winds of Destiny, and the next 5, there's 3 more that I have to write. The next 5 will be called Pillars of the Empire. And it makes a lot of sense once you learn about the world. The winds have special powers. The pillars have special powers. Basically, the pillars are elemental mages, and the winds are anything else.
What falls under the anything else, just as a for instance?
Well, South is the first wind that we get to know, and she basically just manipulates energy. She's pretty versatile. She can sort of mentally travel across the landscape, sort of like expand her awareness and more or less fly and take her fellow magic wielders with her. That's what the winds usually do when they work inside a house in the Holy Empire, and I will possibly talk more about that. But let's just take it that way. And all the winds can manipulate energy, and they can use air. Some of them do it better than others. And then we have West, who is, well, do I want to spoil that? Yeah,
you know you do.
I love my West.
You know Wes is standing back there like, just tell them already.
So West is a wind. He can also travel mentally. They don't physically fly, but they travel with their mind through the air. He can do that very well, but he's also a shapeshifter, which works to save his life a couple of times. And he's discovering that more or less by accident. He was never meant to find out, but his life took a sharp turn at the beginning of the book, and then he needed to become who he really is. East has strength as his additional power, and he's East Line. He's the hero of book number 3. And then we have North in book number 4, who thinks her special power is speed. We learn more about that later in the book when she discovers that there's more to her ability than just being very fast. And I'm not going to spoil that, but North she is less prominent than the others, especially the guys, but she's very determined. She has a backbone of steel, and I'm happy I'll be able to bring her back. The final book in the whole series is called Spirit Sings, and it will bring back all the main characters. They will all get some screen time. I will admit that I'm a bit scared of writing that, but
What's scary about that?
there's so much plot that I need to cover in the final book. It will be about all of my heroes uniting for a mutual purpose, and they need to be in different places around the Holy Empire, and so I can't just tell this from one single point of view. Excuse me. All the other books have a single point of view character, and they are always in the title. The final book will have a mix of them, and I'm so glad I decided to use chapter headers for the series. I can, let me show you one. Like, this is the hard to see. This is the chapter header in South. She's South.
So there's like an image.
Yeah, there's an image in every, and I mean West has a different one. West is a whale, so I have like a little orca That's
Oh, okay. So it's like a grayscale, like drawing of like a whale.
it's
That's
a
really
black and
cool.
white. It's sort of like a tribal image.
Yeah.
So south, her house is the rabbit house, so she has a rabbit. West is West Whale. He has an orca. East is East Lion, so he has a roaring lion, obviously, because he also is a person with. He needs to learn some anger management. Let me put it mildly.
He's a fiery individual.
He is. Oh my God, Earth. I mean, he's just and he sometimes he acts a little rashly and regrets it later on. But so he gets the lion, and North is a deer. So I have a deer in that book. Earth is a bear. Sky is a falcon, which you just had to be Sky Falcon. And Sun is a snake, and Moon is an owl. So I have a chapter graphic for all of my main characters, so that will give me the opportunity to use it in Spirit Sings to show who is talking.
Okay. Okay, right, because they're first person.
They're first person. Well, no, they're not. They're third
Oh
person.
no, that's right. They're not first person.
They're third person close or close third person, which is we get their
Yeah.
thought, but nothing else. I don't.
And Spirit Sings is gonna be the same thing. The third.
Yes, it will be close third person, but we'll have different point of view characters. And I intend to bring all of them back, and that is another thing that worries me right now because I want to have it all balanced. So all of them need to get some screen time, which is 8 people. So it's going to be
yeah. Yeah, the most I've I've had a book with 8 points of view, but there was one main point of view because that is the character that the series revolves around. So he was driving the action. Everybody else was supporting, but like, yeah, the dealing with their personalities and getting everybody's face in there was like, that drove me nuts.
Yeah,
I wish you good luck.
I want to bring South back as a driving force, but I mean, I kind of know what needs to happen, but I'm not entirely sure yet how all of this will come together. And I'm more of a pantser, so I don't know how things go if and when I'm done with this book.
But you still have, but you still have a little ways to go because you still have Sun story and Moon story.
Exactly. So I'm sort of halfway through Sun already. I'm missing a fairly big part in the middle, and I'm missing. I have written quite a bit around the ending, but it's not entirely done yet. But Sun
seems to be fighting you. I see your posts on social media. Sun has been not very cooperative this past week. Going by your social media posts.
Actually, Sun is I haven't been writing. I mean, I have been fighting writer's block for like I don't know several months now, and but anyway, so the series is getting there slowly but surely. I promise I'm not going to drop it.
I don't think the characters would let you. I think if you threaten to drop it, the Sun might be like a little more cooperative.
I need to threaten him a little more.
Yeah, that's what I do when they don't cooperate, and they suddenly, all of the things that weren't working in the story just suddenly work.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I mean, for Moon, I have another very rough plot, and I already know Moon is another woman, and
is she going to be easier to work with, or is she going to give you as hard a hard time? Oh, another hard case coming.
She's a butch. She's a butch, and she's very convinced she knows everything that she needs to know, and she's she's
well, maybe you'll get lucky that she'll have decided what she wants to do in the book, and you'll just write up what she's doing. Those can be fun books when the character's like, nope, this is what I'm doing. I don't care what you want me to do. This is what I am doing. All right, I'm just going to follow along and take notes.
She does have a plan. I mean, she's not going to take being sacrificed lying down. That is just not her way. She has heard rumors of others escaping. I mean, not surprisingly, she's number 8. But the priests are really trying to hush it all up because they don't want their magic users to rebel. But Moon knows what she wants, and Moon usually gets what she wants, at least in her house. So that makes her pretty much overconfident.
So then let's talk about the world. So the magic users in this world are sacrificed in order to I think it was to strengthen this barrier that is over them that keeps out some really horrible stuff.
Yeah, that's the story everyone gets told. So the Holy Empire is the place where my magic users live, where the winds and pillars live. They're tightly controlled by the priest case that rules over the country. It's part of a continent, not all of it. It's basically one major. It's like Central Valley in California, basically. Imagine that. And it reaches to the coast on the west, and there's a desert in the middle of the continent, and it doesn't get that far. So they basically it's a large valley north to south with mountain ranges on the sides. And at some time, a couple hundred years earlier, that's a prequel that I'm sort of sorting in my mind that I'll write eventually.
So no main character has stepped forward to claim that story in the prequel.
But at a time, like a couple hundred years earlier, there was a big confrontation in the continent. Things got really, really bad, and the magic users got together to create what they call the veil. It's sort of like a magical barrier stretching over the country and keeping it safe. It's like a huge ward, if you want to put it into fantasy terms. And the winds anchor it in the 4 corners. Well, not corners, but basically the 4 directions, and the pillars are the ones that sort of like hold it up. And each of the so magic users are tightly controlled. They live in the sacred square, which is in the center in Holy City, and they live in what they call houses. So it's like 8 magic users per year that are put into houses. House, that's a term for it. They're supervised by priests, and they are taught to use their magic in service of the country and the priests. So they mitigate environmental catastrophes. They build things. The earth sort of work with rock. They can build houses. They create dams. They do all that. Moons work with water. They control rain. Skies use lightning. They're mostly used to smite people who offend the priests. And suns work with fire. And as I said, the winds work with air. So we have these 4 elemental pillars, and each house consists of 4 winds and 4 pillars. And bordering the sacred square are the 4 pyramids for the pillars. And then there's 4 major pyramids at the edges of the country. There's one in Jungle Fortress, which is at the southernmost point. There's one in West Harbor. There's one in East Gate, and there's one in North. Ooh, I forgot what that was called. I think it's East Gate, and it's North something. Sorry, just blanking on that. Anyway, so each winter solstice, the 4 pillars get sacrificed, each on their pyramid, 1 per day, and then the winds are dragged off to their pyramids at the edges of the empire, and that's where they meet their death. And
And their death releases their power to fuel, not to fuel, to power their
things.
magic to power
Mhm.
words.
So their magical essence sort of rises into the veil and maintain the power of the veil. And everyone knows that this is essential to keep the veil going. And as the books progress, and I don't think that's a big spoiler, it turns out that this isn't exactly necessary, that veils can be powered in different ways, and that all these sacrifices are basically a sham.
Well, it's their control, right? They
It's
need
also,
they need the magic users to be to, to be cowed and to other, because they have magic and other people don't,
yeah,
and they don't
yes,
want them to realize that they are more powerful than
exactly.
regular
They
folks.
do get brainwashed from a very early age into obeying, and I have that as part of South. South is used to being used to doing what she's told. That's a phrase that comes up during, almost all of the stories, but mostly in South. She's used to doing what she's told to do, and it takes her quite some soul searching to overcome this conditioning. I mean, this is Stockholm syndrome doesn't exist. But
Well, it
basically,
does. They don't have a term for it.
well, this is an aside. Stockholm syndrome as such does not exist as a psychological condition. So, but anyway, they have been brainwashed into believing that this is their fate, this is something they need to do, this is a service to their country, and they're expected to die when they're about 25. There's always 25 houses, but of course, the the small ones are just babies or little kids. They can't do much. The older they get, the more powerful they get, and of course they need to be firmly controlled so they don't find out they can do more than they're supposed to. And
That's
that's
why they have
hopefully
to kill them before they get too powerful, because then they might be
yeah,
like, wait, why am I listening to you? Why am I not
right,
in charge?
right. And this might be the place where we could start with chapter 3 of
Sure.
Sky, when he realizes, and this is going to be really awkward because I have to pull out the file and I won't. I try to look in the camera, but I'm not sure I can do this easily. So I just, grab a couple minutes and read you chapter 3 or parts of chapter 3. We'll see how far I can do this. And you'll see how Sky actually decides that
Well,
he.
first, fill us in on what happened before chapter 3. Like,
Okay.
what were they doing before we meet up with them?
Okay. Sky is. I love him. He's so funny. Sky is a bit like lightning. He's sort of like all over the place. He loves experimenting with things. He has been experimenting with his lightning powers, and he has found out that he can actually manipulate what he calls slow lightning in the bodies of creatures, plants, animals, and human beings. We would call it manipulating the nerves and the neural system, the brain. Because if you look at it closely, if you study physiology, basically the nerve impulses that we use to function are electricity. And he calls it lightning, and he calls it slow lightning because um, our nerve signals don't quite travel at the speed as electricity does through copper cables, but it does. So basically, his power is controlling electricity. He calls it lightning because that's how he sees it in nature. But he's been experimenting and he's been finding out that he can actually numb people by slowing or stopping the electrical impulses in the nervous system.
That's cool.
So he's been experimenting with that, and he's been experimenting on his favorite person called West. It's another West. It's West Falcon and not West Whale of book number 2. We need to keep these separate. Um, the naming convention has confused some people, and I
Wait,
apologize for
what
that.
is? Give us the naming convention real quick, because I think it's interesting.
Wait, pardon?
Tell us a little about the naming convention.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I already mentioned that in every house there are like eight, not exactly, there are exactly eight people, four winds and four pillars. They always have the same name. All winds are named after the directions, the 4 points of a compass. So it's always, every house has a south, an east, a west, and a north. Every house. They only distinguish themselves through their last name, basically, which is like South Rabbit. So in Rabbit's house, there's a, I'm going to repeat myself, but I want to make it really clear. There's a South Rabbit, a West Rabbit, a North Rabbit, and an East Rabbit. And in the next house, which are the whales, they're also all the four winds. And there's also all the four pillars. And they're named for their elements. Their sun. No, they have an order. So there's a moon, which is the water elemental mage. There's sun, which is fire. There's sky, which is lightning. And then there's earth, which is basically earth and plants. So every house always has the the eight names, and they're only distinguished through the house name, which is rabbit, whales, falcons, whatever. I haven't really listed all 25 because I never needed all of them. But they're basically, this is slightly leaning on Aztec culture because they had a naming convention with the animals as well. So we meet all kinds of moons and all kinds of skies and all kinds of wests. We don't really meet a lot of them, but every one of my main character had a family comprised of these eight people.
Oh, so there's 25 west, 25 norths, 25 south, 25 moons. Because
Exactly.
each house, I get it. So each house has one of them. But
Exactly.
they all have the same first name, which is those eight names.
Yes.
What
Exactly.
differentiates them is the house names. All
Right.
25 of them, of the Wests, have different house names,
Exactly.
which is their last name. Gotcha.
Yes, exactly. And it's another way of dehumanizing these people.
Yeah.
Because they don't have truly individual names. They're named after their function, after their power. And this is something only a few of my characters actually realize that they have been dehumanized. They have been turned into something less than anyone else who has a true name. And it's like slave names, basically.
Yeah. No, this is wild. I didn't realize that there were multiples. I got to read more closely next time.
Well, I try to explain that in some parts of the books, but it's such an integral part of these people that they never think about it. It's all they know.
Yeah.
It's like we all know that we have a first name, and my first name is Hannah, and my last name is Steenbock. But in Asian countries, it's the other way around. They name the last name first, like Kim something or Park something. And that's the naming convention. But even so, we usually have individual names. But slaves, like slaves in the
I was
US.
trying to mute myself so I could cough, and I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
I'm so sorry. Go on. Ignore me. I'm so sorry.
But you see, on the plantations in the south of the US, the slaves were, I don't know how they got their first names. Possibly their parents were allowed to name them, but the last names were the names of their owners. And to me, that's another very degrading thing to do. So the priests in my fantasy world actually degrade my characters by giving them such, they're not individual names, they just get labels. They get like a wind label and a pillar label, and that's all they have. And
In the house, are they assigned to the house? Like, how does one get into a house?
you get abducted as a baby and
Ah,
stuffed into a house, basically. And yeah, so babies are put into houses. They're between like, they're around 1 year when they put into a house.
so then, so all the 8 people in the house are not all the same age.
They're pretty much the same age.
Oh, so they put all the babies in one house
They
and
put
then they
all the
grow up
babies.
together.
So when they kill off a house, they start a new house with a new set of 8 babies, basically.
I see.
And then they start moving around the square. So they're actually 25 physical houses. 24 of them are on the outside, or on the, well, it's a square. So they're lining the square. And the 5th one is more or less in the middle of it all. The 25th, they call it the first house, because that's, they kind of count them backwards. It's always the first house that gets sacrificed. They don't know that the first house is actually built on the foundations of the very first pyramid that existed in this world. That is something I will reveal in spirit in the final book. That'll be fun, because then we get into the history, and I can't spoil that yet, but one of the characters will stumble over an ancient library and figure out a lot of stuff.
Nice. I like
So
ancient libraries.
it's going to be real fun. But yeah, I'm not there yet. So anyway, what I want to show you in chapter 3 is chapter 1 and 2 are basically Sky playing with his powers and showing the relationship to his West, and how he's starting to rebel a little bit, sort of like developing the mindset that maybe he doesn't have to obey the priests. As you can see, they're starting to get dangerous at age 25 and they start to question their existence. So that's what we have in chapter 1 and 2. We have Sky playing with his powers, discovering things, starting to think dangerous thoughts. And chapter 3 starts basically, well, let me see, there's the file. It starts basically after the sacrifice of his moon.
So this is chapter 3 of Sky Falls.
This is chapter 3 of Sky Falls, and maybe we can flash the, well, I can't show you the cover because idiot me doesn't have a print book yet.
It just came out, so we forgive you.
Came out. And seriously, the print went live last Monday. So even if I had ordered it, it probably wouldn't have gotten here in time for the show.
No, author copies take the last time I ordered author copies, it took a month to get it.
German Amazon is a little bitter about that. It usually takes about a week. They never promise, they always say it could take 3 weeks. But generally they get here within, a week. But
oh, really? The author copies?
The author copies.
No, it took me a month from KDP USA.
They're also better quality than the US copies. I ordered US copies once too, before they offered author copies in Germany. And I decided that I wanted to know, and I bought a couple of author copies. And shipping was insane, but we're digressing. Let's go.
Yeah, okay, let's go. Sorry, we got distracted by the difference. Ending author chat. I'm gonna mute myself. Go ahead and read. Let's meet Sky.
Yeah, and I'll see how far I can go, because I can sense my voice starting to give me trouble. So anyway, Sky Falls, Pillars of the Empire, Book 2, Chapter 3. Sky was holding West unable to soothe her sobbing. They had just returned to the house, climbing down from, and that is a mistake. That is a mistake. No, I'm not. It's good. Sorry. They had just returned to the house, climbing down from the sun pyramid, and were now sitting in the yard, wedged in a corner near the kitchen. It would be his turn tomorrow. She had agreed to send him off, which was sweet and wonderful and terrible and making her miserable. West. He pulled her close to him and put one hand on the back of her head, drawing her in even more closely. When his lips found her ear, he spoke in a voice so low that nobody else would hear him. West, my love, I have an idea. She snorted wetly, sobbing and laughing at the same time. Only you, she whispered, and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Clothes had never mattered much to her, something he found endearing. Let's experiment, he went on, and her hands tightened on his arms. Really? Her voice caught. I know of no better way to spend our time, he said, glad to see a hint of the twinkle return to her eyes. It really was a shame he had never found the time to climb the walls with her. But the priests had run them ragged, clearly intent on squeezing out every bit of power they could before sacrificing them all. Sky didn't waste any thoughts on those men and women. Instead, he focused on West. Like I said, I have an idea. A giggle started in her chest but didn't make it all the way out, getting stuck in grief and pain. He wiped tears off her face with a thumb. Yes, she said after a while. You play with air, don't you? She turned to look at him with a frown. You know that. I am a wind. Yes, but I've never seen you do what I'm thinking of right now. The way she blinked told him that she was pushing her fear and grief aside to focus on him. That was exactly what he had intended. What are you thinking of? Sky wrenched his thoughts away from the pyramid that awaited him back to his idea. Can you use air to help someone scale a wall? West blinked again, looking confused. How? I don't know. I'm not a wind. You said you had an idea. I do. She rolled her eyes at him, a sight that made him grin. He always loved it when she did that. Can you make air hard? Her teeth caught her lower lip, a clear indicator that she thought the idea weird, but interesting. I can try. Sky just held her, letting her work through the idea. She wouldn't try. She would do it. He had all the confidence in the world. West was awesome that way. His awareness caught something shifting close to them, something moving with power. Then, quite suddenly, West reached out and grabbed something invisible with her hand from thin air. That is quite fascinating, she murmured as she pulled her hand back, holding something that Sky couldn't see. He held out his hand. Something touched it, something that West was holding. Yes. This is air I made hard. She smiled at him, pride in her eyes mingling with a question. What do you need it for? I will show you tonight, Sky said, his heart suddenly beating fast as an audacious plan took shape in his mind. What? We'll have some fun, he said, knowing he couldn't tell her anything yet. He forced himself to calm down, to keep the playful smile on his face, to keep her and everyone else from suspecting anything. Moon would have known. He had always been able to hide anything from her. He had always been unable to hide anything from her. But Moon and Sun were already dead, and the house was grieving, preparing for his death and the death of Earth a day later. Then the winds would travel to their pyramids at the edges of the empire to die and anchor the veil with their energy. Sky looked up with awareness, watching the veil pulse high above them, sensing Moon and Sun in there. They were waiting for him and the others, as was tradition. He didn't intend to follow tradition. That's the end of chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, he's definitely a man with a plan.
He's so cool. I love Sky. I love Sky. He's so playful. I mean, the funny thing is, they're all different. They're all generally good, kind people, but they're all different. I mean, West is a little helpless at first. East is furious. North is timid.
And you're talking about the main characters from the different books, because we also met another West in there, but that's not the one that...
No, Sky is West, and she actually picks a name for herself later in the book, so we end up not being as confused. Although I have a very, very fun scene where, which I can't really tell you because it's all spoilery. But it's where, I know I can't spoil it. You have to find it to yourself. It's at the end of the book, and I can't really tell you, but yeah. Sorry. Sorry. I want to tell you, but no. This is one of the fun things that you'll have to read for yourself. But yeah, it has confused readers that that there's so many people with the same name, but there's method to the madness, as I tried to explain. So anyway, yeah, it's most of the houses are okay. Some houses are rather dysfunctional because you get weird personalities. West Whale totally hated his house. He refused to be reunited with them in the Vale. But most of the houses are less dysfunctional. I mean, I have in Earth Splits, the first 10, 15 chapters actually take place inside her house. It's the only book where I really show life in a house before, sort of like for about a year before the sacrifices, and how they deal with the fact that they know they will die. I mean, this is a terrible situation, and it's an enormous stressor to see the days pass and know that your life is measured in days rather than years, and they all deal differently with it. But eventually, Earth House, the bears, they come up with a way to sort of find peace with the whole situation. One of them does not, but the rest sort of team up together and sort of manage to handle their emotions together. And that is a situation I wanted to show at least once, just to bring home this pressure, the trauma that, and how it changes people. Earth has also a Sky in her house, obviously, Sky Bear, and he was pretty vindictive, pretty cold person, and kind of happy to kill people with his lightning bolts. And he is actually the one who killed East in his book, because East Lion and Earth Bear have a connection, which is going to become important in Earth's book. But anyway, so her Earth Sky is even somewhat of a cruel person, but when the house rallies and they all work together to get a handle on their fear, he actually becomes a different person. He sort of grows up in the last year of his life, and Earth falls in love with him a little, which gives her a lot of problems once she actually escapes.
And that's in Earth Splits.
That's in Earth Splits. It's part of, I sort of explore more the personality. I mean, the first 4 books are pretty much action adventure, and Earth Splits is also, yes, action adventure, but it also has sort of like a deeper dive into Earth personality and I mean, they all faced the same problem. They got ready for being killed. They never planned for a life beyond that. I mean, how could they?
Right. That wasn't something they expected to have.
No, I mean, it's like, yeah, well, I know I'm going to die in 3 months. You don't start planning anything. You don't think about the future because there isn't one.
Right,
Quite.
right. So I think Earth splits. So like I guess part of it is like a fantasy slice of life because you're giving that perspective on what is it like
Mhm.
leading up to
Oh yeah.
that sacrifice,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and how they deal with that and how that affects their decisions on
Yeah. Yeah.
what to do about it.
And I mean, all of my main characters will have to adjust to suddenly finding themselves alive. Surprise! I mean, there wouldn't be a book if they didn't.
Yeah,
But
I don't think that's a spoiler. Especially since it happens like in the beginning. It's more then the question in the reader's mind becomes, okay, do they continue to escape their fate? Because they escape at the very beginning. It's like, okay, they're free now, but
exactly, and they
do do the people upholding this tradition and that are keeping them down catch up with that? And like, do they find a safe place where they can live free? And are they able to, going from being in this very restricted, everything provided for you, very like, they don't know how to survive.
they don't, and the one character who has the biggest problem and possibly suffers the most is East because he ends up in the wilderness with nothing. I mean, seriously, not even really the clothes on his back because they basically tear and fall off him. So,
Oh no. So he's wandering naked in the woods.
well, not quite. I mean, he manages to kill a couple of animals, and he sort of wraps rawhide around him because it's really, and oh God, the poor guy.
He doesn't want to be swayed in the breeze.
I mean, he knows he's stinky and everything. The first time he meets other people, he's sort of like, yeah, sorry, I know I look like a monster, but and I smell like one, but I'm not. Trust me.
I'm just a poor unfortunate soul.
Yeah, yes. Or East has quite a few fortunate or less fortunate encounters. I put him through hell pretty much, but
It sounds like you kind of earned it, though. It wasn't so much that you set it up; that some of it was his own doing.
very much so. I mean, I was a little surprised by some of the things he did, and I was a little surprised by some of the things that were done to him. I mean, that book has quite a few Panzer elements that threw me when they happened. Um,
That's Earth splits for anybody
that's
keeping score.
actually that was East Wars, but I'm sorry. I have that. I mean, Earth East is one of my most volatile characters. He often does things that I don't expect. I mean, I have others that are a bit more behaved, but East is the one who's a bit unpredictable when I write him. And this is a bit spoilery, but he's the main character in East Roars, and he is a major side character in Earth Splits. So he comes
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So he comes back and we see him through the eyes of another character. And he's still pretty much a guy who likes to take things into his own hands and not think about consequences when he does that. He's getting better about it, but he's still a bit, like I said, he's a bit volatile and has anger management problems.
But he did. It also has a lot of trauma and
He does.
you know things to work through.
He does. I mean, I think he's pretty much the one I put through the worst things. I mean, Sky does get, I mean, I mangle my heroes, and I'm not even sorry for that. And I mean, Sky does get he gets a bit roughed up and everything, but I think East is actually the one with the most trauma. I really put him through the ringer. But anyway,
But he could
So,
handle it because he showed up again in Earth Splits. So obviously he survived it and came back for more.
oh yeah, he came back. Yeah, that's something that I really want to emphasize. I very rarely kill my main characters. I don't write dark. Um, yes, I put my people, my heroes, through a lot, and I really hurt them, and I put them through trauma. But I also give them happy endings, at least happy for now. And I always hope that what they go through is worth it in the end. I want to have a satisfying end. I do not believe in cutting the legs out from under a reader in a story. It's something you can rely on. I don't kill my main characters. I just don't. I have one book where the main character actually dies, which was a teamwork with another German author, and it was very clear from the way we started out writing that both of them, the character I wrote and the character my co-author wrote, that they would be dead in the end. Um, that is a German book. It's the only book that I actually published through small press, and it's still out there. But that was an experience I will not repeat.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like killing main characters because then you can't write any more books about them.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't think a lot of people do that. On the other hand, I have a good friend who's writing her fourth, I think it's fourth book in her historical fiction, and yeah, that's the final book
But
for her
that's
main character. But
yeah. It's hard with historical fiction because people died young in the past, many of them, and there was so many more things that could kill you because they didn't have penicillin, they didn't understand about like there was just like the odds of survival, especially in like a book where you're put through all sorts of situations was a lot lower because they're just they can't you get a scratch and it gets infected, you're basically dead unless your historical fiction is set after they found penicillin and that it's widely available. If not, you're dead.
yeah,
You get sick, you're dead basically. Like there just wasn't you need some kind of surgery or something, you're dead because there was no concept of germs or anything. Like literally the odds of surviving a historical fiction book are very tiny. Like that's like winning the lottery because you have to do everything right and your body has to respond correctly to everything and not require outside intervention. you know
I mean, I did study archaeology for a couple of semesters, and yes, there were people who realized that treating wounds with wine, for example, alcohol, would improve chances of survival. I mean, they knew that in the Middle Ages, especially um, oh, what's that called in English? The Arabs in the Middle Ages were basically much more advanced than the Europeans back at that time. So in Arab Spain, there was a major scientific center in Cordoba, and they were actually working together. All faiths were working together, and they were actually researching things, and they were scholars, and they were much more advanced than, let's say, the Dark Middle Ages in Europe. And a lot of them actually knew quite a bit about medicine. They knew about using wine and spirits as disinfectants, and we still use that. I mean, a lot of what we use in the wipes and the hand disinfectants is basically ethanol, which is alcohol. So people weren't completely dumb about medical knowledge, and we have archaeological evidence of people surviving pretty gruesome stuff because they were being well cared for by their friends, family, whatever. We even know that from the Stone Ages, we know that people survived breaking their bones. We know that they survived infected teeth, which is actually a major problem. In fact, teeth actually kill people even today
mm.
because people don't know how dangerous it could be. But even back then, they knew about pulling teeth. They knew about using fire, cauterizing wounds. So, I mean, none of that is pleasant, but it helped people survive.
But
So,
there were also a lot of medical practitioners who were into like the
oh,
bleeding and the purging of people. So like you had, again, it was like winning the lottery. You had to see somebody who had the right knowledge and who wasn't going to bleed you to death, with like what
yeah,
happened to George Washington and other historical
and
figures.
I mean, the rusty nail could absolutely kill you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the thing. You have tetanus, which is a massive killer, and why we should be vaccinated against that.
Yeah, yeah. So like it's definitely was, like winning the lottery, as I said. Like you needed your body to react. You needed to find the right person who is going to do the right thing for you and not bleed you to death or give you strange potions that don't actually treat the problem, you know? So
Yeah,
it was
that's
like
why.
Russian roulette when you got sick. So I can understand like a historical fiction book, like the main character, I feel like you have at least like 50-50 shot, especially if it's like a magic world, because
Yeah,
you could have some magic healing or something. But
that's why I love. It's why I prefer writing in fantasy worlds because I don't have
yes.
to do all this research. I mean, seriously, freaking research. Um, but also because I can have magical healing and I can have magical means of. It's not a Deus ex machina. I don't like
Hmm.
those. I
Not
like
me
to have
either.
an established system. But in my world, in the Holy Empire and that world, we do have magical healers. Some are
Yeah.
priests, even we have good priests that are healers and have other abilities, other magic. But the major antagonists, they use blood magic and it's pretty gruesome. And the sacrifices are basically blood magic. Um, they they use the life power of these poor people they kill. And I go a bit deeper into that in West Flows in book number 2, where they end up fighting a particularly nasty priest who uses blood magic, and you'll see how this blood magic works on people. And that's part of the plot, how they counter that. And Sky actually encounters blood magic as well. And he is not a fan. To put it mildly, he's not a fan. But nobody has used on them as a fan. it's,
No, no. I
it's
don't I don't think anyone would give blood magic a good rating. Well, except I have one character who might, but she's not sacrificing people. She's just using her own blood. And she just made armor
that,
so she could
that's
fight
true.
other
That's
people.
true.
Yeah, like I think there's good ways to use blood magic and bad ways. There's too many bad ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've encountered blood magic in various fantasy books by now, and I've seen it done really well. But in my world, in the Winds and Pillars world, blood magic is something bad generally. There might be exceptions. It would be fun to explore that in one of the books, but generally it's bad and it's manipulative and it's controlling. And yeah, Sky runs into that. Um, And well, as I said, I don't kill my characters. You can infer, you can read between those lines. But yeah, and and I'm really having fun exploring these powers. I mean, I didn't know everything Sky could do until he started talking, and I'm still discovering things that Sun can do. And I do have a little moon in Earth splits. Actually, she appears in East Roars for the first time, a little girl who is actually a moon and was used as bait to trap East. Mm. And she has fun discovering her powers, and I had fun discovering them with her. And Earth is also helping her discover more of her powers and start using them. She's like 6 or 7 when you meet her, and So I have a little more. I have more people around with other magical powers, but the main ones that I talk about are the winds and the pillars, and yeah. And I have a nice little. I have a nice little Easter egg hidden in Sky about his west at the end.
Oh, okay. So in Sky Falls.
In Sky Falls, there's a little Easter egg that will connect his west to other characters as well. They all, a lot of them have cameos. Um, they're going to know each other. The biggest problem will be actually getting Sun to meet all the others. But since he discovers this old library, he'll probably figure out stuff that we'll see later on.
And that'll be in the one you're working on now, Sun's book.
I'm working on Sun's book, yes, and his escape is also something that surprised me. I mean, of course I had to get him to escape, but I didn't quite expect his power to take over.
And what's going to be the title of Sun's book? Because I just see you call it Sun's book in social media.
Yeah, it's Sunburns.
Sunburns.
Sunburns. Sunburns and Moon Rises. It's going to be, those are the others. And Spirit Sings. Spirit Sings is, well, I don't want to spoil all that, but in Spirit Sings, they tackle the Holy Empire as an entity. So.
Nice. That's going to be a fun one. For the reader. Maybe not for you, the writer. you might have to fight a war against the characters to get the book to completion.
It's going to be a challenge, but yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to it because I love the series, but I kind of also want to finish it. I have so many more ideas. But...
And those additional series that you want to write will be different, not part of this world, different worlds.
Very different. I have a, oh God, this is a little difficult because it's a very small niche, really. It's I have a Wolf Shifter series, and that's I'm doing what a lot of romance authors do. I have a focused couple in each book that, find their happiness, and then I take a side character from one book and make him or her into a main character of the next book.
Mm-hmm.
This is very much a romance trick. I don't even want to call it a trick. It's a process. It's a way of creating a series by, moving from putting side characters into the sequels. It works. Let me put it that way. It totally works. It makes people want to read about all of their stories and see them find happiness. Now, most of the Wolf Shifter books have this unspeakable alpha trope, and I really hate that because it's completely wrong science. There is no such thing as an alpha in actual wolf packs. Actual wolf packs are basically family. It's mom, dad, and the kids. And this alpha nonsense was a mistake because scientists were observing wolves in captivity that were not a family group, and then of course they fought for superiority, and you'd have the strongest male would become the leader. This does not happen in nature. So I never liked that trope anyway. I think it's somewhat icky. It plays into patriarchy. I'm not a fan of all of that.
Me either.
Denigrates women. So you won't find alpha tropes and omega tropes in my Wolf Shifters. They also refuse to be spicy, which is another strike against my books, because most readers of Wolf Shifters or shifter romance expect a lot of spice in the bedroom, whereas my wolf said, no, please shut the door. I don't want you to watch.
Let us have a private moment here.
Exactly.
Take the cameras back.
So we do have some kissing, and we do have some, I don't even do fated mates, although they find their mates and they know they're their mates, but it's not fated. So I have Wolf Shifter books that don't really fall into the classic tropes of the genre, but I like them, and I've had 6 out, and I've added a 7th book last December. It's called A Wolf's Christmas. They're always called a wolf's something. So it's a wolf's quest, a wolf's fear, a wolf's honor. And then I added a wolf's Christmas, and it's a story that takes place in Germany. And it gives a couple of their happy ending, and they get to see all the German Christmas madness, which is fun.
Oh,
And
that
of course,
sounds like fun.
so what I'm doing, I have another story, sort of, I don't really plot, but I have the major points fixed and I know who they are. And it's a series I kind of like to add on a little bit because, I mean, every book is another little bit of income. And I know people like these series, and I can sort of slip them in between the other books. So the one I'm working on and off, is called Wolf's Hacker. And I'm taking a character from Wolves number 6, who was one of the antagonists, and he gets his redemption arc in Wolves 8. So that's going to be fun to write. But that's a paranormal thing that's basically set in our world. It's basically contemporary. And the thing I'm developing right now is a vampire series with a twist. I want to put it into the near future. I want to make it hope punk, but also vampires and shades. There is a little twist. The vampires are the good people. And I have a team of 3 siblings who will be turned to become vampires in the fight against the shades. And there will be a romance arc in them. And that might also become a series that I can add on. But I'm still trying to figure out the background for this. I'm tentatively putting them into the 2040s. But that means incorporating climate change. It means incorporating some wild political changes. And I don't feel entirely secure with that just yet. But I bought covers. So this series is going to happen. It's called Penumbra as a series with, it's a game on the shades. Penumbra means basically shadow, the part around the shadows. And that's stuff that I want to get into. So
Yeah, I've seen some posts about that on social media, so it all sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I do love the covers. They're quite colorful, and the cover guy, James. Oh, I forgot his name. I'm sorry. I will get you a link because I really think we need to talk about covers. I love the cover designer for my Winds and Pillars because she is so awesome, and I can't tell you how much I love the Sky cover because it's so brilliant. It's just everything that I wanted on it. And I think we should put her name on there. It's Tyra Morgan, and I'll dig out James' name for the gods for the Penumbra series because we all need to know cover designers. That's my biggest problem, finding covers for my books. That's always the biggest obstacle, and I'm never really good at ordering a cover until I absolutely need it, which makes promotions hard. So I'm proud of myself for actually getting covers for Penumbra before I even write it. So that's cool.
Well, then you have to make sure that what you write fits the cover.
Yes, and the cover for the first one, that's called Lion's Battle. That's because the main character is called Leander Menopoulos. He's Greek, and Leander is also Greek, and it means lion man. So his battle is Lion's Battle, and on the cover he has white hair. I didn't see him with white hair when I started writing the story. He didn't have white hair. He's Greek, so he basically has dark hair, Mediterranean type of person. And the the cover made me think, and I know where his hair went white and why it did. So that's going to be fun. That's actually a plot point inspired by the cover.
That's pretty cool. You should put a note in the book. And
You muted yourself.
oh, yes. I was saying that's really cool. You should put a note in the book because that's a really cool detail, and we readers like those kinds of details. We like to know that.
Yeah, and it makes, to me, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it'll be fun to actually tell readers about why his hair is white and how it got that way. Let me say,
Yeah.
it wasn't a pleasant experience for poor Leander, but
Well, he can blame it on the book cover designer. You didn't do this. The book cover inspired it. It's not your fault.
well, there's a pretty big showdown, and it's going to be part of that. But yeah, it made a lot of sense to me when I realized that this was how it needed to happen. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
fun because I had the titles for the winds and pillars. That was something that came to me when I had the first idea about the entire series. I already had the titles. And these titles
I'm deeply
actually,
jealous of that because I write the book and then I'm like, the hell are we going to call this? And the character just stare at me like, that's your job, author. You come up with the title. We did our job. The book is now complete. You need to figure out what to call this thing.
I love coming up with titles. I do. But with the winds and pillars, this was except, I mean, that was the first time when these are 9 books, and I had the titles for the 8 books instantly. And then the 9th book sort of came up as a completion for the whole thing, and that title came to me almost instantly. So I had,
Are you going to be able to fit everything in that one book? Because it's
well, I'm already laying foundations for what's going to happen, and I'm dropping hints, and I mean, this is a minor spoiler. When in West, they discover there's a pyramid to the south of the Empire. It's south of Jungle Fortress. They discover an old neglected pyramid, and that's the first one. There will be more, and so they find those, and those will play a major role in toppling the empire and ending the rule of the priests. And that's going to be part of book 9, because that's when they put everything together and come up with a plan what they need to do to end the unholy empire.
it just doesn't sound like you can do all that in one book. Like you might need more than one.
Like I said, I think I can have the major parts in place at the end of Moon. Moon is going to find the last bit, and then it's basically just a question of coming up with a plan, getting everyone into position, and doing the thing.
Well, we'll see if you can get it done in one book. Because to me, it sounds like a lot still needs to
Yeah,
happen,
yeah,
and you're dealing with 8 different points of view. And I
yeah.
know I've had I'm working on books right now that have 4 points of view, and trying to get them all to the same place to do this, at the same time is tricky. And it's just multiplying that by 2, like because like if you think about it, if each chapter is from the
I'm trying to
character's
make it
point of
easy.
view, that's 8 chapters into the book, and we just met them and they've done whatever they were able to do in that one chapter. And then for each of them to have 2 chapters, that's 16 chapters. Like the book will either be very, very large, or they have to be able to do a lot in very few chapters.
But the good thing is that I have only 4 locations where they need to be, so they'll team up. It's going to be teams of 2, and well, it's going to be 5 locations, but I don't want to give away more than that. But yeah, so basically, I can have, I have four different, this is going to be author speak now. I have four different plot lines, and I can have two viewpoints per plot line,
I
basically.
see. I see. Yeah. Then that
I
might be
may have a
doable then.
fifth one that's sneaky, that may not, well, we'll see how that goes. But I think it's doable. Most of my books come in around 50K, which is kind of like, yeah, I know readers want page numbers, like 250 pages, 280 pages, in the way I set up my print. So I will assume that Spirit will probably clock in around 80 or 90. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be a bit bigger, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
But
Maybe it is doable. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take us on this wild diversion, but like,
yeah, I mean, I think I can actually publish Sun possibly in summer. Kind of depends on how well I get back into writing more regularly. Moon is probably more like end of the year, and I would expect Spirit to be next year, because honestly, that's going to be a challenge. So that's basically my timeline: having Sun out in summer, having Moon out in fall, winter, and then Spirit in the next spring. And possibly a wolf book or a penumbra book in between. We'll see how that goes. And I also have like a dragon book I want to finish, and a dragon book I want to completely overhaul. I want to really completely overhaul Dorel's Dragon, and basically double the page number in it. Probably call a different name. I did write a prequel for that, and yeah, adding that in would probably double the page number. And I want to do that because it's Dorel's Journey is actually too short, and it has nice backstory that I want people to get, but I'm struggling with the logistics of all of that because it's not even a new edition. It's basically a new book that incorporates an old book, and I don't know how Amazon will handle that.
well, if you take down the old, unpublish the other ones, and
Yeah,
then call it a new edition, and then like I think you'd have to give it a different title or like differentiate it in the title that this is
yeah. I
something
would.
different.
Yeah, I have a new title for it. It's going to be Dorel's Dragon instead of
Yeah.
Dorel's
And
Journey.
then in the blurb, just make it very clear so that if people have bought the other ones, that they know that this is what's new and what's different, what's in this, and
Exactly.
if
So I
there's
will say
anything additional.
this is basically um, um, not a new version of Dorel's Journey, but basically a new book that incorporates the things that happened in Dorel's Journey, but adds a lot more. So, and I mean, I've kept Dorel's Journey free. My series starters are all free. And so, I mean, if they downloaded it, fine. It's no loss to them. and and Dorel's Dragon would be the new series starter, and it eventually would probably also end up being perma free. But I probably want to sell it for a while because it's going to cost me a cover.
Yeah, we need to earn enough from the books to keep going.
That's the point. I mean, it's hard. Covers aren't necessarily cheap, and if you want
No.
good covers, you
As
and
somebody who
it's
publishes between 3 and 6 books a year, I can confirm that covers are expensive.
yeah, and I mean, I do have a deal with my cover designer for the Winds and Pillars, and I'm grateful she agreed to that. So those are at the lower end of what you tend to pay for covers, which I feel justified because it's a symbol cover. Basically, you don't have to have people on it. You don't have to play with light a whole lot. It's fairly. I mean, Tyra is doing a great job because she's just creating these awesome atmospheric covers, but
They're beautiful.
I love them, and yet they're technically a lot less demanding than making a people cover or group cover or something. So I and I mean, I knew she was. I told her right from the start she would be in for a 9 book series, which also is sort of like reliable income for a while. So I thought I could make a deal for a somewhat cheaper cover than usual, and she agreed with that. And we've been working well together. And I'm so glad I found her because those covers are just awesome. I just love them.
They are beautiful.
Just putting them together, I have a sort of like a little header graphic on my website, and I put it in the books in the back matter where I talk about the other books that I have. And I have this little graphic in there, and it's a Starfield background, and I have all the covers next to each other, and it's just so awesome.
No, yeah, I've seen the graphic. It's very cool. So is there anything else you want to say about Sky Falls?
Sky Falls just continues the action adventure thing that I do in the Winds and Pillars, and we get to see old characters. We have cameos, we have mentions, we get to see them, we get to play with some of the other old characters. And if you like that kind of thing, if you like action adventure, magic, fantasy, if you like found family tropes, if you like throwing an inexperienced, naive person into life and watch him find his feet, make mistakes, learn from them, that's a book for you.
And there's magic. There's lots of magic. She didn't mention that, but there is lots of magic.
Yeah, but it's not the main focus. I mean, yes, there's lots of magic because we have the houses and we have the magic wielders and we have everything, but it's also I mean, the character matters. I call it epic fantasy because it's a long story. It has magic. It's not high fantasy as such. We're not doing all this magic.
No, it is high fantasy because we're in a completely different world from Earth with completely different rules, magic system, everything. It is, don't listen to her, it is high fantasy. It is epic fantasy because if you've read the Lord of the Rings, there's very little magic in it, and that is what epic fantasy came from. So the roots of epic fantasy is you're in a completely different world. There is magic. You, the characters that you're wandering around as you're wandering around as Sam and Frodo and even Strider, do not have magic or use it, but there is magic in the world, and so your books meet the definition of epic fantasy. They are like Tolkien's works in that way.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot more. Instead of they just have to defeat Sauron, your people have to defeat an entire empire of Sauron. So they have a much bigger. Instead of one villain, you have many, and your villains don't know all of the people who are, because even after they topple this empire, that will be the end. They won't be in power, but those people who will still exist. They're not going to kill all the people off who were part of that class. Then many of them will just take off their regalia and fade into the public, but they will still be resentful, still feel that we need to bring back the empire. Like, they're opening themselves up for an entire world of trouble and having to deal with these people coming back and wanting to try and topple the new thing that's created, because it will be fragile, it will be new, and people don't deal well with change.
And that is really unfair. You know that? Because you're just setting me up for another series.
Well, or you could take the way Tolkien went, because he actually started to write a sequel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the more he thought about it, the more depressed he became, because if mankind there's only one direction it could go, that people hundreds of years now could forget all of the things and fall prey to Melkor, who's Melkor is one of the Ainur, who's he was created at the very beginning, like Tolkien sort of gods and things, and but he wanted his own way, and he corrupted Sauron and got Sauron over to his side. Sauron became his lieutenant. Melkor got handled in like the first age, so that's all in the Silmarillion. He was handled. He's out beyond the Door of Night. He can't come back in. But and Sauron, by the end of Lord of the Rings, spoiler alert if you haven't read or watched any of that, he's lost his physical form. He has no ability to take action on the world, but he's still around as like an evil spirit. He just can't do anything. He can't interact. because the ring being destroyed all that, because he bound, like an idiot, he bound his physical form into that ring and all of his power and everything, and there's not enough left of him to do anything, but he does still exist. So in Tolkien's sequel, which he stopped writing, was that mankind went back around to like forgetting all these sacrifices that were made, but the people destroying the ring, because the elves had left, they'd lost this sort of wonder that was in the world, and they started messing around with the dark powers again, and the cult of Melkor came back, and he just stopped writing it because he didn't want to. It was just depressing to write about the fall of mankind in the descent of this, because there wasn't really a good way to come out of that. So that's where he went. So you could decide that I don't want to do this, or you could decide this could make for some fascinating sequels, and we can see how this evolves, because whatever they put forth after the Empire is going to be there's going to be an evolution process, because this is all they know, and they know this sucks. But what do you do after that when you don't like with the system that you have and you don't know of a better system?
Yeah, but see, I got caught on the idea that there might be a lot of bad people running around underground and trying to unite to bring back their.
Yes, there would be.
So I could have, the kids of my current characters become the new main characters and fight against an uprising of the evil priests.
Yes, you could totally do a sequel with that, and that would totally work. And then you have to be careful that the people who overthrew it don't become worse than what they overthrew.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's actually how the Holy Empire came to be, because the people who fought the bad guys actually after centuries, became like the bad guys they fought. So, but yeah, thing is, I don't do political stuff really well. I prefer following one character closely, possibly two. I do two characters in the Wolf Shifters because that's basically a romance adventure thingy, and I have two main characters who end up falling for each other in the Wolves. But I like following one character in a closed perspective. That's how I like telling stories. And honestly, the Winds and Pillars so far are the most challenging series I undertook. And I really kind of hope I can pull it off, because, as you said, there's a lot to pull in for the final conclusion. And
I have faith in you. I think you can do it.
Thank you. I think the main thing really is to write a story that captures the reader's attention and the reader's heart, and the actual details are a lot less important. It's important that the story resonates with them.
It makes sense and flows logically. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading a lot of romance because right now I can't deal with anything dark. I need the safety of a happy ending. And I mean, it's always the same story. It's like two people fall in love, have a misunderstanding, have a falling out, fall back in love, and have their happy ending. And yet there are myriad ways of telling that story, and there's so many ways of looking into their hearts and showing their development as a person. And I think it's the same with fantasy. You can have all these adventures, these awesome adventures of magic. I love them, and dragons and whatever. And yet it's still always an adventure story. It has a character who experiences stuff and grows through it and sort of builds towards, at least for me, a satisfying happy ending where all the struggles are worth it. And that's the story I like to read in many, many various guises and variants, and that's what I write. And even if like the bare bones of the story are always the same, it's about creating a world that touches the reader. It's about creating characters they can relate to, and the details are a lot less important. It has to have this connection to the heart. If there's supposed to be if it's going to be a successful book, it needs to touch the heart.
No, I agree. It needs to make us laugh and cry and have all the feels, or most of the feels. My books don't make people cry. I don't think. That's not a reaction I'm wanting when you read mine. I want you to laugh. I want you to, oh my God, why did they do that? But not cry.
Well,
Fuzzies.
I want my readers to cry at a couple of, once or twice maybe in the book, but I also want them to laugh, and I want them to be happy at the end. When the thing is, I want them to close the book and go, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And that they like the world, and that they like the ideas, and that they enjoy it. I mean, it's entertainment, but entertainment has its value.
I agree. I 100% agree. That's why we write, to entertain.
Yeah, and I keep writing about people fighting against, oppression in all kinds of shapes. And I mean, my poor winds and pillars, they're certainly oppressed. I mean, there's little worse than you living your entire life knowing you have to die at a certain age. I mean, sometimes I say it's a cross of, Logan's Run and whatever fantasy you might want to think of. Logan's Run, but it's not Game of Thrones, but sort of like, I don't even know if you're familiar with Logan's Run.
I've heard of it. I've not read it or watched it. I don't remember if it's a movie or a book. I've heard of it. I've heard that the name. It's not. I haven't interacted with it.
It's basically science fiction in a world, in an Earth where nobody can live on the surface. At least that's what they're told. And it's an underground town, state, whatever, and people are basically killed when they reach 25. Because the reasoning is there's only so many people that can support as a population, so they're supposed to reproduce by the age of 20, and then 25 they're going to be sent to another realm, which Logan finds out is basically they're getting killed, and so he runs away. And that's so basic. That's sort of like what my characters do. They escape being killed, and I'm taking it to the part of what happens after they escape. How do they even handle it all? And they do handle it differently.
Yeah, because they've left their sheltered life.
Yeah, I mean, most of them can't read, they can't write. They've never been taught about all of that. They don't understand money. They don't understand travel. They really have little to no idea how society functions, and they don't necessarily understand interaction with other people because they've never had to practice it. They were completely sheltered. They were given what they needed, and they had to work. That was their life. So having to deal with the concept of money, of trade, of hierarchy in society. I mean, classes, jobs, all of that is so completely foreign to them. And I don't think I have touched enough on all of that, but Sky is so curious. He wants to see the world. He wants to experience everything. And so that's a major motivation of why he decides to get out as when he sees a chance, because he wants to live.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can understand that, not wanting to die at 25. That's like,
well, but he also wants to experience the world. He wants to see. I mean, he's traveled to places with the house. The winds have been taking him, so he knows how Jungle Fortress looks. He knows there's a big lake in the south end of the valley, Reed Lake, and so he's seen all these places from above, but he's never really been there. I have a nice little scene in West when he actually enters a big town for the first time after getting away. And so basically the quote is, he knew what a town looked like, and he knew about the people. He could, Sacred Square is not open to the public, obviously, but he gets some sounds of people and all that. And then I write on, but he had no idea how that many people smelled. So he basically walks through a medieval town, and you get all the, the sewers, and you get the dirt in the streets, and you get the refuse, and you get all these smells that are not fun. And as he is in a different shape, he's not in human shape as he experiences that. So his senses are even sharper, and he's like, oh God. We would not have liked to walk through medieval towns, let me tell you that.
I don't even like walking through New York City. The smells you get, like, forget medieval. Like, you can still experience the overwhelming, it's not everywhere in the city, but like, as you're wandering around, you can get some very interesting aromas coming up from the sewers. Not the sewers, the subway, because there's grates over the subway, and very interesting scent.
Specific metallic stench. Yeah.
Oh, well, there's a plethora of things. Usually smells like cabbage and urine and other things. The subways themselves have some smells.
And, there was a fashion, and you can see that in many different empires actually in the world, where people actually had shoes with very high soles because they had to walk through all the mud and worse in towns. So they wanted to be above it. So they had these plateau shoes, if you wish, but really, really tall, like this. And it kept them above the muck that was lying on the streets. And they'd have the pigs, root through everything and hope they eat a lot of the stuff. It's just so icky to think about all of that. But it's why tone it down. I mean, I write medieval fantasy, basically, technologically, that's the level they're at, but I clean it up quite a bit in my stories, because I think the reality was, it's something that would be so gross to our modern senses.
But it wouldn't have been gross to them because they were used to it. That's why I tone it down in mine, because it's normal. To them, it's normal. Like, and they're so used to it that they probably don't smell it anymore.
It's probably just another level of information. I mean, I do know how a pigsty smells, and it's not a place I would, voluntarily stay for long. I did grow up in a village, so I've mucked out some stables myself. So, yeah.
I have not, but I have been to places with horses, like Renaissance fairs, where there are droppings. I know what it smells like. I can imagine in a closed-in space how that might be.
Let me just say, pigs are really the worst. Everything else is a lot less unpleasant, but pigs are really bad. Yep. That's why people try to keep pigs a little further away from their living spaces. You can have in Scandinavia, in the north, people used to have animals inside the houses, especially in winter, because they were another source of warmth. But they tried to keep the pigs at the far end. Because horses and cows are a lot less smelly. And we've already talked for an hour and a half again.
Yeah. Did you want to read anything from Earth Splits, which is the one we were going to talk about, or we want to keep this centered on Sky Falls?
I think I'd be happy if you could change the title to Sky Falls.
Yeah, no, I can do that. I can change the show notes too. Yeah, all right. So any last words about anything? We talked about a lot of things. Maybe we
Yeah.
don't end with the pigsty. Let's swing it back to something a little more pleasant to contemplate before we leave our brave listeners.
Yeah, so if you're a reader who had the patience to listen to us ramble about a lot of stuff, including pigs, and if you like a book, and I'm not even talking about mine, but if you like any book that you read, tell your friends. We indie authors usually don't have these huge marketing budgets. We don't have a lot of marketing clout. So we do rely on word of mouth. So, like I said, if you really enjoyed the series, please tell your friends. That's going to help us most. And with that, I want to say have fun. I'd be very happy if you drop me a line if you enjoyed your book, my book, Melinda's books. Let us authors know because sometimes we struggle. It's sometimes hard to keep writing a series if you don't have a whole lot of sales, if you made a promise that there will be another 3 books and you're like, well, okay, this is going to be at least $1,000 in covers, but the books aren't selling. So we get our depressive moments, and I can't tell you how much it helps to get a little review somewhere, to get a little line as an email telling us that you enjoyed it. It means so much. It helps so much. And tell your friends. That also helps a lot. Thank you.
No, it definitely does. Although I would keep writing them even if no one was reading them because I don't think the characters would let me quit.
No,
Hannah has nicer characters than mine. They would not let me quit.
well, mine sometimes give me sleepless nights, and I have a rather relentless, what I call writer brain. That's the part of my brain that throws story ideas at me, and that is brutal at times.
Oh, I can imagine as someone who has more plot ideas and character ideas running around my brain than I can physically write. I
Yeah,
feel that.
ideas are not the problem. Ideas are definitely not the problem.
No, time and well, I'm a procrastinator. That's
Yeah,
why I need deadlines.
yeah. And for me, it's time and it's actually blocks. I get a lot of walls, inner emotional walls that keep me from writing, and it helps if I know there's people out there who love my books. It's really sometimes that simple. Um, so yeah, let us know.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Well, I don't usually get writer's block, but I do get times where I'm just really tired and like I want to write, but I end up just like wandering, like watching just a movie instead. Because I'm
Yeah.
like mentally like wrung out from my day job and don't have the bandwidth to write. And then the characters get really mad and the movie goes off and I end up writing till like wee hours in the morning anyways because they're like, no, you have to write this. We had this brilliant plan. You must execute it. You don't need sleep.
Yeah, I kind of want to be sucked into a story again. I had a really good year when I wrote The Wolves. I was writing 2,000 words a day, and that completely broke last year, and I haven't really been back into a good writing space since then. So it's part burnout, it's part winter depression, and it's part looking at the world and not feeling safe anymore either. So it's a lot of stuff to handle, and it keeps me from writing. And yeah,
You got to use writing as your escape. It
I
is your
need to get
safe
back into
place.
I need to get back into scheduled stuff. I need routines, and I have been struggling with establishing good routines. I did best when I was in home office with my day job, but they've pulled me back for 2 days a week, and it messes me up because I need a day or two to get into a routine, and then I get pulled out again. And I might mention it. I'm fairly certain I'm on the autism spectrum, and it repeatedly adjusting to different routines is hard. I'm trying to find the structure that works for me, and I haven't been there yet. I haven't
I
gotten there
feel
yet.
your pain. That's where I just fall into the hole of procrastination. I need schedules.
Yeah, and at the same time, I fight them, and I hate being squeezed into a schedule. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I am the same way. I don't like having stuff planned for every day, but I do the most writing when stuff is when like I am, on the schedule. Like I was sick the last couple weeks, and I wanted to write a lot because I wasn't working, but I mean I was also sick. But like I was very sick. I wasn't like I was like very out of it too. I don't know. But I just beat myself up because I was like, okay, we're not commuting, we're not working 8 hours a day. We should be able to get a few thousand words down, and I just couldn't. And I just, yeah. I think it came down to lack of schedule because I was sick. I wasn't working for a few days, and then I did try to work from home. But for like last week and the end of the week before, and it was totally like throwing me off because I'm only usually working from home 2 days a week, 3 days a week. I usually have to commute, and even with all of that, just like working 3 days in the office and commuting, I go the same 3 days every week, like clockwork, and I'm able, and I get much more writing done those weeks because I'm in a very structured, like, schedule. But and like I take time off and stuff, like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write all day, and then I just can't focus. I can't, because my brain is all like, we would usually be doing this right now, but we're not doing that because we're not working this day. So
Yeah,
I feel your pain on the thing. I need my schedules and my deadlines.
yeah. But yeah, so dear listeners, dear readers, dear fellow authors, let's support each other and help each other be productive, creative, and give you the stories that you want.
Yeah, and thank you all so much for listening, and thank you, Hannah Steenbock, for coming on and talking to us about Sky Falls and many, 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 many other things. And hope you'll go check out the book and check out Hannah's other books. They're a lot of fun, and hope you'll be back for another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. We'll be having another fantasy author and another fantasy book next week. And if anybody is curious, today is February 10th of 2024, so any time references are based off that date. So summer of 2024, and I think winter of 2024 were mentioned is when sunburns and moon rises might be coming out. So yeah, you got your time references. So have a great day or great night wherever you are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, all the things so you get notified when the next one drops. And I've been Melinda Kucsera, your indie author, and thank you so much for listening. Bye.